Welcome to Adapt Session 7, Strategic Ministry Planning. The preparation for this session is to have read Chapter 8, and I think I'm all out of attendance sheets because I used my last two for the last two sessions.
Well, here, I will write them down here real quick.
Actually, no, I have one left, so maybe we should print it or something, or maybe you have an extra master copy. Copy.
Oh.
Man, Freudian slip. I mean, master coffee. I need some coffee. Master copy.
Yeah.
So, last week we said, Alvia, you're doing the devotion, and Mary
Yes.
Jo isn't here for prayer, so we could open that up if you'd like to
I will
pray,
do
or... Hello.
Charles, good evening.
Hey.
Good evening,
Sorry
Randy.
I'm late,
It's all good.
That's right.
Better late than never.
Here.
especially since we're so
Getting a good start.
thin in numbers.
Yes.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Strategic ministry planning, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
and you are the devotion leader.
Yes. So, organizations, businesses, groups, and institutions around the world all participate in strategic planning. When it works right, it is a wonderful process that clearly defines the end result that each organization expects. For people, it is a tedious process that requires a lot of time, resources, and effort that involves rallying the troops long enough to ask the hard, diligent questions that will answer the essential question, how will we accomplish this? This question is the most essential question of strategic planning. It is what generates who is needed, how much money is needed, how long will it take, and what the challenges that will be, which ones we face. If an organization doesn't engage in strategic planning, there is a great possibility of wasted resources and aimless, mundane work overtaking the day-to-day busyness of the organization's key agents. What's amazing is that God engaged in strategic planning. Before time began, he understood that at some point sin would be an issue for the world. So, within the Trinity, he established a staff retreat to address this issue and to ask the essential question, how will we fix the problem? After intense discussions, role play, case studies, and roundtable conversations, it was determined that the most strategic, long-term solution was to send Jesus Christ to die for the sins of all future generations. Revelations 13:8 reads, "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world." Notice the wording, from the foundation of the world. Now that is strategic planning.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's have prayer. Dear God, we thank you for your strategic planning. And we're sorry we messed things up. But we know you have us in your hands. Help us to listen. Help us to discern. Help us to calm our hearts. Help us to see the big picture, to see the goals that you laid out, and not get sidetracked by the mundane and routine. You have had a great vision. Help us to see that vision and strive toward it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So, today, like I said, like we have discussed, we were talking about strategic ministry planning. Before we begin, let's go over the group covenant, also known as the ground rules for discussion. Make sure that we speak from the center of our own experience. That's rule 1. 2, let's make sure we stay focused on the topic at hand. That's 2. 3, talk about ideas, not people. 4, everyone has the same opportunity to speak as well as to not speak. Reflection is a good thing. And then finally, bunny ears to get us back on track should we diverge from the path. Homework complete, read chapter 8. So let's get right into it then, right? In this session, we will focus on strategic ministry planning. Without an intentional plan, we won't move forward in a purposeful, targeted manner. Instead, we will concede to tradition and the way we have always done it. Everything must align with the vision and mission. Continuous evaluation and needed course correction are the plan are critical. So what were some of your initial observations, some places you highlighted from your books that stood out to you, might be most relevant to start our conversation?
Again, there were so many.
There was a lot.
I mean, right off the bat, it correlated with what you said, the absence of strategic planning. The unstated plan becomes simply existing and trying to get from one year to the next. We just kind of roll on in the mundane. Yeah.
We had that written down too. Plus the next sentence, the lack of strategic planning becomes more obvious when there begins to be a decline in people, energy, and resources.
That's happened with us.
Yes, and that really was glaring to me.
Brings us to today.
Yeah.
I also underlined the one here that says committees typically manage how things have already been done.
Mm-hmm.
Where was
It's in
that?
the middle of 87, when decisions for our churches are not based on living into the vision to accomplish the mission of making disciples or any stated goals or objectives for the year. It's hard to know if the church is actually accomplishing anything beyond merely existing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had
I
underlined that
as well.
sentence too. And we've talked about this earlier, that we've done things like this before, and then, things don't change, and here just another program to try. Then if that doesn't work, there is something to blame. And that's, so if we don't change, then it's this program's fault. We didn't, and we tend to want to blame.
Mentioned again about the importance of doing the mission, doing the vision, and then tying the strategic plan to support
Into that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think every chapter's talked about sort of the order that
Yeah.
you get.
Yeah.
And
To do
referring
things
back
to
to,
the mission
well,
and the
this
vision.
isn't the most important, but this,
Yeah. We
is
gotta
it,
do
is
these
it-
things first.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I underlined 88 and highlighted and underlined. One of the signs that the leadership is trying to embed the mission and vision is seeing it printed in multiple places, like agendas, the website, bulletins, and newsletters. We are also looking for whether the leaders can verbally articulate the mission and vision and how their decision-making process ties to that mission and vision. And I see this a lot with school because that was what this past summer's PLC was about what is the school's mission and vision. So I'm having very similar conversations at the middle school as I am here. But that is kind of what I've noticed as a change in the middle school, at least, is every teacher has the mission statement posted, or the vision posted in their classrooms. The principal says it every morning on the announcements. I still have not memorized it yet, but I'm getting there. I'm very close. But I see it more often, and because I know that that's what our goal is, I am more inclined to have that frame of reference when making any decision for my class or for PLC or for anything else. And I will say from experience that it has helped, seeing it and being attuned to, oh, this is that, right? Like before last year, I didn't even know that what Kelly had been saying on the announcements was the mission and vision, right?
Yeah.
No idea. It was just a phrase that she said at the end, and I just thought it was a positive phrase that she had come up with to get the kids to be encouraged, right?
Yeah.
No. It's like the whole point we're there. And it took me until having this summer conference to realize that. Just like,
You're a teacher.
right. Yeah.
What hope is there for the rest of us?
Right.
Well, and I marked on page 91 under the remedy that second paragraph is kind of what our next step is after this. It looks like is to have a workshop where we really pull this together and we have our mission statement, but to really re-look at our vision statement and rethink that and that we to pull that together.
Yeah. And really make sure that the goals that we have for the church are really in line with what the congregation wants,
Yeah.
or needs.
Yeah, and I did. I emailed John Randall, our coach, to ask him what that looks like and what that involves, so I can present that at the Ad Council in September. So we have an idea of where to go next, but I haven't heard back from him yet. So it does talk about the core values, which I thought was interesting. I did go to their website, and here's a church ministry core value audit, and they have a list of 24 and then other things of determining what St. Matthew's core values are. And I think that would be a really interesting exercise to see what people thought about that. So I think that sounded intriguing to me.
Is that like a questionnaire or survey?
Yeah, it's a survey, and tells you not work your way through the list quickly, going with your first impression, not important, somewhat important, important, most important. And it's preaching and teaching, family, Bible knowledge, world missions, community, encouragement, giving, fellowship, leadership, prayer, excellence, evangelism, just a whole list of, and then you're supposed to kind of identify the top 5 from what people say
as your primary
to
vision.
see, because I'm sure, for some people, and I don't know if, it may be worship, but it may be, I don't know, fellowship, it may be world missions, it may be, I think it'll be different things
For
for
each
different
person.
people. But to see what that was like out across the
Yeah,
whole
good
congregation
data.
would be an interesting
Yeah, absolutely.
thing.
And that's really where it starts when we're thinking about what the church wants. You got to ask the people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what are they, keeping in mind that it's got to go with the mission statement
Right.
of how does that fit into
Yeah.
making disciples? It's not about us feeling good about whatever.
Yeah,
but,
doing
yeah.
something.
I did have not offense, that's not the word I wanted. They're on the top of page 95, one of their, they wanted you to have setting goals that they need to be specific, measurable, available, relevant, and time-based. And I've heard that before, and that makes sense. But their example was, by the end of the year, we will reach more people by receiving 5 adult profession of faith, baptize 8 people, collect 400 names, and increase our average worship attendance. I thought, that to me felt like it was going against everything they've been telling us to work toward.
Yes.
That it's not about
The numbers.
the numbers and all that. Now, wait a minute. But then down in the couple paragraphs down, where they talked about what our goals would be to increase our number of small groups, or add a new ministry, or
Yeah.
change our worship experience. To me, that felt more like in line with what they've been trying to get
Yeah,
us
and
to
I think
think
they just
like.
use that as an example because it's easy to fit that into the SMART goal
Yeah.
template, right? And
Right.
it says on 80 or 94, for example, a church goal for outreach might
Yeah.
be similar to the following. So
Yeah.
very specific to that
Yeah.
simplified structure of, well, if we're trying to do outreach, these are the numbers we'd like to hit.
Right.
And I think that what I've kind of realized is they're thinking more like a business
Yeah,
in that regard through a lot of this book, which isn't bad, but the church shouldn't be a business
Yeah.
model,
Yeah.
in my opinion, my facilitator opinion. But
yeah,
but it works, right? Like there's a reason why businesses become successful. It's because they have the strategic leadership, they have the planning, right?
Right.
So I see it.
yeah.
Good. Any other observations?
I mean, the structure thing is kind of interesting, and it would be, again, I think it would be interesting to see how that plays out with the last week's discussion of, changing the structure and how that would play out.
I do have a quick question. I was wondering on page 92, they were talking about the August through July or January to December calendar. Do we know if that applies to us? Are we on a specific calendar?
Well, that's kind of interesting, because I think we kind of function in two separate ways. Because our budget goes January to December, but our programming tends to follow the school year, August through May. So that right there seems,
I don't think that's a problem necessarily.
Right.
yeah,
I think the budget, it just runs with calendar year, and
Programming.
programming is like programming. It's like school.
yeah.
And so,
And I think it's easier to start new projects, new groups or whatever in the fall. It
I think you're right, coming out of the summer months when
Yeah.
people are,
yeah,
a lot of
distracted
people
by a
are
lot of
gone or
life.
traveling or
Yeah.
doing whatever, kids are out of school,
Yeah.
yeah.
then you kind of get back into
Yeah.
the routine.
And that's typically been what, that rally day that we're calling Friendship Sunday has been, is that coming back together. It's,
Right.
again, it's a little off kilter now because school starts clear back in August.
Yeah.
And I remember, even a number of years ago, when we were still buying Sunday school material from Cokesbury, it would start after Labor Day.
Yes.
And we were
Yeah.
starting classes before that, and there was always that awkward
Awkward 2 weeks.
or whatever weeks,
Yes.
and now it's turned into 4 weeks or.
Right.
But yeah, but it does feel to make sense, and even though we have, like I'm not tied to the school anymore, it's still just
Yeah,
that loop just seems to make sense.
Okay, I was just curious because I had never heard of it. I know January to December, but August through July, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So, what is the process in determining the activities and events of the congregation?
we tend to follow two things. One is what we've always done in the past, and then rely on the pastor to provide that program leadership versus coming out of a meeting and a group of people and, and it's sort of like I'm concerned that we'll get ourselves in the awkward position when we're done with each session and we're ready to be coached. how we move ahead, and, how we assimilate the Sunday morning group and this group, and come up with kind of a unified strategic plan, how to move forward beyond adapt,
Right.
how to be adapted or become adapted. So I don't know if we try to get a group of 5 people, or 6 or 7, or how big you want to make it, and kind of what, I guess, write out an action plan. And you can't, when you start new stuff, it takes a little bit of time to plan and prepare and be ready to
Yeah.
put it into action. So I don't know if it's sort of like, given the time of the year, Pastor Phil's already said he's planning for Advent. And so, like, started the first of the year with, if we have new programs, new initiatives that we want to try to do. I don't think we want to try them necessarily like in June of next year, because we're into summer.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So,
And I know Pastor Phil had mentioned, of when both groups are done, getting both groups together and having some discussion, which makes sense. And like I said, I'm curious what the conference program perceives how this is supposed to progress. And in my conversation with Phil, like talking about nominations, when we were talking about changing the structure and all that, and it's already so late in the year, and we've already got our volunteer thing tied to our pledge drive, and all that it's already put together. So it's kind of hard to change things now, but that doesn't mean, and his comment was, that doesn't mean mid-year that we may change, and if we need to call another charge conference to vote on the new plan, then we do that, so. Yeah.
Does anybody feel like we have too many meetings?
For adapter for the church in general.
In the operation of the church?
A lot.
There are a lot of meetings, I think.
I've not been on many of them, if any, so I'm not sure. But
Here's
my
my-
perception is, from what I've heard from you two, is we have, the
Each
meetings.
committee has its own series of
Yeah,
meetings.
it depends on what you're meeting for, but last week's, the previous session really resonated with that accountability and the structure and the simplified structure of, man, we need to cut some of these, what are you doing at meetings, right? That's what I have. The question I have is, what are you doing at meetings when it's like
Yeah.
this
I think
structure?
The book
So-
referred to them as a zillion hours of meetings, or
Yeah.
something like that,
So, and part of it, I think, is, and part of that goes back to that conversation of how leadership is developed and how people are incorporated into committees. I think sometimes the meetings aren't as effective as they could be, because too much time is spent rehashing, and we talk about things, but when you come to the end of the meeting, you don't have okay, this is what we decided, who's gonna do this piece, who's gonna do that, we come to a meeting to gather and strategize and decide what needs to happen, and then assign tasks, and those happen. But too often, we just sit and chat about things, and there's not an action plan to take out of the meeting
Right.
to prepare for the next meeting. So I think, at least that's been my experience in some of them.
2 weeks ago, the speaker on the video proposed having, trustees, staff, parish, all of the meetings together at the same time. So if we need money for something in staff parish, there's someone from the trustees sitting right there. So is that the way I interpreted that? Like everyone get together all at the same time? And then I thought to myself, well, good gravy, how long will that meeting be?
Yeah,
And
that's.
how effective will it be?
And how
And,
effective?
Right.
Yeah.
Because, in a nutshell, as chairman of trustees, I write the agenda, we discuss stuff, and that gives me a list of things I have to do, and it's gonna take me a month to get them all done. And, more than anything, it's like the meeting becomes, I gotta keep other people informed. We always bring 3 new people on trustees every year, and 3 people go off. So the first year, the 3 new people are simply getting educated to the property operation of the church and the parsonage. So I feel like the task of the chairman is to be a teacher. And yet we need the group to keep the leader, the chairman of trustees, make him be transparent, keep everybody informed of what's going on, and not taking off, on a tangent. And a lot of it, we have kind of a procedure that we're gonna follow. There's certain things, something comes up, and we need to get bids, we need to get competitive bids, and and I try to hold the meeting to about an hour and a half, because I know myself, I can't keep my attention focused anymore in the evening for more than that. But if something else is going on concurrent with that meeting, it's like, 50% of our property operations things are gonna slide and not get done, because there's not gonna be any time to do it. I've served on finance. Finance does not meet monthly. Finance tends to meet about every other month. We plan a stewardship campaign for the fall, and we review budgets, and then have meetings in between to see, are we on budget? Are we ahead of budget, behind? Do we need to institute a $500 spending limit, on things? And then staff parish is more of I think the duration of meetings are proportional to the level of crisis in the church.
Yes.
When everybody in the staff is happy and functioning, you can have about a 15-minute meeting. And then when it's not, and you gotta hire somebody, or you gotta, resolve a problem, then, there needs to be some discussion, some creative thinking about, what's the best way to try to improve the staff problem. And I can't see that happening in a meeting where finance is talking and trustees are trying to get property operations done. And then in the olden days, we had an education committee, when we had a vibrant Sunday school program. And the worship committee met regularly and assisted in planning for Advent and for Lent and in between stuff. So I don't necessarily think that we're having more meetings, than it takes to run the church. I kind of wish there was a caring committee, a group that we were focused, and maybe a communications group. I mean, these are, and I don't want to delegate those things off, well, that's administrative, make the office do that stuff. So that's why, as we've gone through this process, I continually ask myself, well, how are we gonna change? What is everybody gonna sort of agree on, the approach we try to take?
Mhm.
And let me do the bunny ears and then I'm gonna shut up.
No, it's all good.
Sometimes I think it's a little bit like, when you fly on an airplane, they tell you, if the masks drop down, put yours on first, make sure you've got enough oxygen, and then help the child or whoever, And so it's sort of like, before we can go out and effectively evangelize, I think we need to improve our own community of the members we've already got.
Mhm.
But that's just, that's a temporary step. I mean, as far as a focus, because then it should maintain itself, and then now we can think more outwardly. But also think if we had a really caring, vibrant church with activities, we're all going to have so much fun that has a tendency to attract other people.
Mhm.
Sort of like, how did the Methodist Church in Frankfurt grow from 1832 when it was started to 100 years later we had a couple thousand members? How did it go from 0 to 2,000 in the first 100 years? I doubt that the strategic planning was, the word strategic planning was like high technology back
Right.
then.
Well, one of the things that came out of the Sunday group the last time was needing spontaneous enthusiasm.
Spontaneous enthusiasm was the
Seems to
phrase.
be what we're lacking.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And that was paired up with a discussion about when a project gets going, when somebody has an idea for a project and they're able to get it approved in a ministry that goes on, we need that spontaneous enthusiasm to help encourage that group to get going, right? To continue on and to do their work. That was the connection for that phrase,
Yeah.
where it came from.
Well, and I think that group also, it was kind of going along with what you were just saying, is that the consensus seemed to be that nominations, maybe what nominations needs to do this year is focus on those core people. Because, if you look at the nominating committee report, there's like 150 slots to fill. Maybe we don't need to look at all, let's focus on those core committees like you were talking about, and then rethink all that other.
What if in our ad council, we had, let's say effectively, if you had 8 to 10 people attend that ad council meeting, so a couple people from trustees, couple from finance, couple from staff parish, couple others, and then, but your meetings are open to anybody that wants to attend.
Mm-hmm, yeah, which they are anyway.
And they are
Right.
anyway, yeah.
Right, and we publish the date, but, we're able to sit down and the thing is, I don't, it's not that, if people on staff, parish, and finance want to know what's going on in trustees, it's fine. I think the way to do that is for the trustees chairman to prepare no more than a one-page report, summarize what's been done, they can read it. We don't need to take time in a meeting
Right,
to listen to a verbal presentation.
right. Yeah,
That's just homework, you email it out, you read it, okay, and then
And-
all you do at your ad council meeting is stuff that requires a decision and action.
yeah. And some brainstorming and goal setting and could,
Absolutely.
could happen.
Strategic thinking.
Strategic planning.
Yeah.
So accomplishing what they're suggesting, but, and if you get those notes out ahead of time, then if there's a question, you ask the question at the meeting and deal with the
Yeah.
question.
Or
But
firing off an
beyond that-
email.
Yeah. What do you mean by that? Or
Right.
what is this? But handle that kind of stuff because, ad council to me is just a reporting session, and
It is.
that's one of those
And they
meetings that
are
is a
boring.
waste of time. That
Yes,
is a waste of
absolutely.
everyone's time.
Right.
I'm hoping that, in these next steps, the conference can provide some examples
Yeah,
of what some of this stuff, I mean, this is
Yeah.
kind of education, here's
Yeah.
what we think we ought to do, but it doesn't really give you a good sense of how it works.
yeah, and,
Which is, I think, your point,
Yeah.
Randy, how
and it
how does
needs to be
this
specific
pull
to
together?
our church.
So I'm hoping they can give some more meat on the bones
Yeah.
about how does this group of 15 people, how does that really accomplish anything when today you got trustees who meet however often and they're doing stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I got the sense that group was more of kind of like a steering committee, and there were still these subgroups that did the actual work. They were more of a planning and everybody
Yeah.
had certain levels of approval to be able to do certain things, and
Yeah,
so I think we need to understand what it is that they're suggesting this look like
Yeah.
before we try to figure out how it's going to work, because I don't really understand. I mean, we're so focused on how we've always done it that it's hard to think outside the box in terms of, well, how might this look differently? I mean, maybe the ad council does morph into this group. And the other
Yeah.
groups kind of maintain,
yeah.
are still the working groups and still doing the things that need to
Yeah.
be done. I mean, I don't know what they're really trying to
Well, and
accomplish with that.
it doesn't feel like, I mean, I do feel like those three committees do good work. It's the other committees that are, I think are struggling and just kind of floundering
Yeah,
and
what's
just
the purpose?
need
Yeah.
some,
we've
a
always
I know
done
there's a
different
so we
missions
don't
direction.
wanna-
committee, but I've never attended a meeting, and
I was on missions committee, and pretty much this is how we spent the money this month.
Okay.
If
All
that's
right.
all it's gonna be, you don't need to have
You don't
that
need
meeting.
it.
Right.
You don't need the meeting.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
A
that,
one-page report.
that
To
could
the
be
ad
done,
council.
and then free those people up to actually do missions.
Yeah.
Instead of attending a monthly mission,
Yeah.
let's get some people together to do whatever mission is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, and I hope this is not a tangent. Have any of us visited other big, thriving United Methodist churches?
Not lately.
Okay.
I'd like to visit, I mean, I think we ought to visit one that's implementing this and to see how that's working,
Well, yeah, if they're actually doing this.
Yeah.
But,
Kurt Freeman is at Grace United Methodist Church, and he's the one that came and did our training. So that would be an easy one
Okay.
to,
Where, what church is
at
that?
Grace in Lafayette.
Oh, in Lafayette.
And here is this was on their website too, that worship evaluation. So when you go visit a church, here's what you can look for. Here's all the things. I thought that was kind of cool.
well, where I was
Yeah.
going was.
I'm sorry, Randy.
About 4 years ago, I probably it was 8 to 10 times I went to Dayton United Methodist Church. And, they have a traditional service and a praise service. And I went to the traditional a couple times, and the majority of times the praise service. Same at Zionsville United Methodist Church. I've probably attended a dozen times down there. A couple times their traditional service, most of them have been the praise service. And then I have a number of friends who belong at St. Luke's, but I have never attended worship services there. And I'm sensing, A, they're bigger, B, they got more resources, but C, they have got more energy and fire and enthusiasm, which is proportional to their size and their budget. But I mean, it's sort of like, I'd like to be a fly on the wall and just figure out, where that spark comes from and how the fire keeps getting fed, because they're doing something good.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, instead of a series like this, if we were just to visit and talk and learn from 3 or 4 other strong, successful Methodist churches, what are you guys doing? And then afterwards sit down and have a meeting like this, and what are the common traits we saw over at Dayton, and maybe Grace United Methodist at St. Luke's and Zionsville, and what of that is applicable here? How can we
Mhm.
copy that?
The last time I felt that way in a church other than our own was when Dan and I visited, well, Charles was there too, but you did not go to church with us that morning. It was in Indiana, Pennsylvania. We went to a Presbyterian church. It was the same church where Jimmy Stewart and his family attended. And we walked into that church, and I want to tell you what, and I know that you felt it too, but I was just so overwhelmed. I was so excited. These people, they were waiting. Like, oh, where are the new people? We walked in, they knew immediately that we did not attend there. There was 2 or 3 people who came up to us immediately and welcomed us, and where are you from? And that one lady, so I started talking about Jimmy Stewart, and she says, "Oh, I can show you where his family sat every single week." So between
The Stewart pew.
the Stewart pew, they had a gift shop, and
Invited us to coffee.
invited us to coffee, and I was like, I want to go to church here every week. And Kim Reddington was afraid we were going to move there because Jimmy Stewart's childhood home was for sale. She's like, are you coming back to Frankfurt? But anyway, I mean, that church was on fire. They were on fire during the service. They were on fire for anyone who came in. They had a long table full of things you could read and pick up and take with you, and that little gift shop was just something else. I mean,
Well, and
that's how I felt.
we've talked about that in earlier sessions here, is when we walk into our narthex,
I know. It's just,
What do you do?
we're here.
well,
Another week. Talk about
I think that what you said and what you said, I think that the ones that are successful are the ones where the congregants are involved. We walk through the door, we come in, we sit down, we expect to hear a message, we get up and we leave. And the ones that you're talking about, you said they were on fire. It wasn't coming from the pulpit. It was from people in the pews. It was those people, and I made this comment a long time ago. I'll slide in at the last minute. And this thing says, I should be here if the service starts at 8 o'clock. I should be there at 7:30 or a quarter till 8 at the latest, greeting people and visiting with people and how are you doing and what's going on and hey, did your son come to and visit? How did that go? All the things that people talk about, and
making
you start
time for
making
others.
people
Yes.
feel like somebody listened to what they said.
Yes. Yes.
Or was attentive to what was going on in their lives.
And really listened when they were
I mean,
talking.
let's just face it, we don't get a lot of visitors here. We're not a tourist spot, I mean.
No. We don't have Jimmy Stewart that lived
No,
here.
we don't have.
Well, let me tell you what, I
We'll give them to go to-
sought that out.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone who goes there,
Yeah,
actually goes to his church, but.
Well, and this is one of the things that we talked about earlier of having that hospitality group. We need to start with a small group, train them well, have them set the example of what it feels like when
Lead
you
by example.
when you're greeted with enthusiasm and caring and and help us catch fire
Catch the
again.
fire.
If you,
Yeah.
like you, I mean, what you were saying, you walk in and it's sort of, so you need to have a reason to be wanting to come earlier, unless you are part of a hospitality group that's trying to model
Right.
that. But if you're not, I mean, and that's what we've done, I mean, there's no reason for you to be here 10 minutes early. There's, you know,
Yeah.
so you watch people walking around and trying to
Yeah.
tidy up or do their job or do this or that or whatever, and you're just sitting there. So,
And that's one of the things that came out again in last week's session of, and it goes along with that developing leadership and leading by example is what did it say here? How do we fix systems so people want to be involved? Our system is broken, how did it break? How do we fix it? Nobody wants to be the captain of the Titanic. Everyone should be able to serve in a way that they want to serve, but that seems to be what it feels like we're missing is people being excited about, I want to be a part of this, with that spontaneous enthusiasm.
well, and when you were talking, I mean, when we talked, I think you were here when we were talking about the committees, but, you know, a lot of times it's just, is there a live, warm body that we think we can talk into to get them to serve on this committee, because we've got X number of slots we have to
Yeah.
fill, and, oh, they'll probably say yes. And a lot of times they say no, and then they get, you know, then you're down to scraping the bottom of the barrel, you know,
Yeah.
who can we put on here, you know?
Well, yeah.
So-
And I know in the
And
past,
it doesn't make for a joyful servant,
right,
you know, if
yeah,
you're like, well, okay, you know, all right, I'll do that, but,
yeah,
I mean, you want people on there that say, I want to be on that committee.
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to do that. Not that I twisted your arm, because please say yes.
Yes.
I've called 15 people and
For you, Charles, what's next?
It's some things that I pulled out. Lead by example goes hand in hand with another phrase that I've heard, learn by doing, which I feel like is what this has really done a good job of, like learn by doing, especially with the, like every week, there's no homework, but, you know, live through what God is calling you to do. You learn by doing. And the question that I have is, where does the fire come from, right? From the whole conversation we just had, that was the question that I wrote down, was where does that come from? And I guess that's, for this church, I want you to ponder that. Where's the fire coming from? Because we see it at other churches, and we see it in the people, we see it in the congregation, we see it in the pastor, the praise band, wherever. But where is that here? And if it's not here, how can we ignite that? Right? That's the next question. That's the follow-up. If we don't have a fire, where's the kindling? Where are the pieces to build it and get it going? I guess is the pre-steps, which is why we're here, right?
Yeah.
That's the structure, the planning, the simplified way of doing things.
And it could be, we need to experience what it feels like again. It could be that taking a group and seeing what it should feel like again and
And I
remembering.
That is a perfect segue. Let me
Okay.
share another morsel. So, when the first time I came to Thursday Night Adapt, I had a mission. One was, I wanted to see Charles in action. And just the dynamics of the group. But the other real reason was, I wanted to free up Sunday morning so I could go down to Zionsville. Because I love that church down there. It looks like St. Matthew on steroids.
Yeah.
Colonial,
Yeah, I've been
style,
there.
architecture. It's like we should be a little satellite to Zionsville. So, this particular visit, I parked in the west parking lot I'd never parked in before. And so I was gonna be kind of finding my way around. I kind of assumed that, it all connected across. And I get to the door and there's two gals, one on her way out and then the greeter, and they interrupt their conversation to welcome me, and I walk in and walk down the hallway, kind of the breezeway type thing, and I'm met, here comes a gentleman, he's probably 75 years old, sticks his hand out, to welcome me and introduce himself, and he's got a name badge on. And where are you from? And I said, well, I'm visiting from Frankfurt. He said, Frankfurt? We have a fella here that he's from Frankfurt. He's an attorney. He said, oh, Gene Robbins, yeah. So he's all excited, and I'm telling him about Gene, so we're really glad to have you here with us today. Let me introduce you to our pastor. So he takes me over and introduces me to David Williamson. And so I told David, well, I visit from St. Matthew's from time to time, and we talked about he came from St. Luke's, and I have some friends at St. Luke's, and they'd always said good things, and he was kind of humbled by it. But I mean, it's just, I was integrated before I even sat down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it's just, I know I'm ready to go back because I know it's going to be another good experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
But, I've got my obligations here too. And I can't do that. But it's like.
Well, and that's, to me, that's what it feels like here now, is the people that are here out of obligation instead of inspiration.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
But it would be neat, whether it's listening in on their staff meeting, because they've got, more than one pastor on staff, and I would just imagine that their staff meetings are pretty darn exciting too.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts, and then I'm gonna guess when volunteer committees, the ones that kind of run the church, meet, that one of the staff pastors, and he attends that and brings that fire, and that excitement, enthusiasm, and the kind of a cheerleading component, as well as, a spiritual inspiration, and that my guess is that their committee meetings are almost like going to church, that
Okay.
you might come kind of exhausted and worn out from the day that you just had, but you leave energized.
Yes.
And you go home refreshed and reinvigorated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And something you mentioned, I think that we did not do well when Pastor Phil came, is we went from 2 pastors to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we educated our congregation and thought through what that meant and really evaluated what the expectations were, because one person could not do those 2 jobs.
Right.
And we really didn't do a good job of putting something in place to counteract that, to support that transition, both for him and for the congregation.
Yeah.
I think we missed the boat there, and I think we're paying the price of that.
I suppose you've already talked about the whole book, but I did think it was interesting on the bottom of 87 where it said, then the frustration sets in, and often we reach for some magic programs. We grasp at straws, believing that if we just did that, had that, built this, hired the right person, or had the right pastor, then we would suddenly have new energy and vitality in the church. And I think that is misleading. I mean, that's what everybody, if we just, if we just had this or that, or built that, or did that, or whatever. And it's been our experience that sometimes this process has been treated as just another program we tried. And we all talked about that, is it's just the latest,
Yep.
greatest thing
Yeah.
that's coming along. And then they go on to say, then if that doesn't work, there's something to blame. Well, see, we tried it and it didn't work, you know. All of these are symptoms of a congregation that lacks strategic ministry planning.
Yeah.
But the ministry planning doesn't say it's the minister, it says ministry planning, and there's gotta be more.
It's
And
gotta
I think
come from us.
You're absolutely right. There was pretty heavy load that was dumped on one person to come in here and try to, and we should have probably been a lot more engaged and supportive, I don't know, something.
Well, I mean, I think we just needed to think through what the structure would be, or how,
Yeah.
how are we gonna divide up these jobs, and what do we expect him to do, and what then can other people take on?
Yes.
And how do we do that?
And could have had an opportunity to have created some specific ministries that might have taken a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go back to that time, right before Pastor Phil arrived. If we had the foresight to think about those things in our minds, how would that have unfolded with the committees that we had at the time? Should that have started with staff parish? Should it start with trustees and getting Phil acquainted with the building? I mean, how would that have unfolded in a good way?
I think,
Go ahead, Jane.
I guess I would think starting with staff parish, because they're kind of the ones that lay out the job descriptions and expectations. But just starting there, I mean, there could have been discussion in ad council about, okay, we're going from 2 pastors to 1 pastor, you know, what is this? I mean, really all of the groups should have been processing that whole thing, because it's been a long time since we've only had 1 pastor. We used to have 1 pastor and had a much larger congregation, and
Right.
it worked. So it's not that 1 pastor can't do it, but we had gotten used to 2 pastors doing it, and
And we let them do it.
and yeah, without really thinking
Uh-huh.
it through, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it
we
was great.
used
I
to only
remember-
have 1 pastor,
Yeah.
and we had 300 people here on Sunday morning.
And we had a single pastor before that when we were even bigger.
Yeah, so
Frank Greer and Dorothy Bryant as secretary. with
yeah.
a mimeograph machine, not computers, you know,
Yeah.
none of those
We
productivity
didn't have
tools.
a financial secretary as well. I mean, the
Right.
staff
Right.
it was 2 people.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, you know,
But those
the
were
structure has changed
Those
over
were-
time.
Those were different times as well. And I thought the book made a good point of that. I mean, back at that time, we still, you know, when Frank Greer was here, I think we probably still had some of the blue laws in Indiana where everything was shut down on Sunday. The thing that you did was you went to church, and then the youth went to MYF, and it was a big MYF group. And who helped run the MYF? The parents were there, and the parents took turns, they rotated
Yeah.
around.
Right.
They provided the snacks, they provided the
Programming.
activities, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and that's part of what this has all been about. We're in a different society
Absolutely.
than we were then. So,
Now, you can do anything on Sunday that,
Yeah.
and sometimes if people aren't working and they're working 6 days a week, that's the day that they can go and do the shopping or do the whatever, or they feel that they've earned the right to go out to eat or splurge on something, and now all the athletics, you know, and I was involved with that, but I mean, they have stuff every weekend, and there are programs for little kids that they travel out of state to go to these
Yeah.
competitions now. So, you know, it's the family, that's what the family does on the weekend. Load up in the
Yeah.
car and we're gonna go to, Illinois or wherever that we're gonna go and, make a weekend trip out of it. But that's what's
I mean, being
happening.
involved in church was an expectation
Right.
at the time.
But, and
now
you
it's
had
not.
limited options.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a
Yes.
That sounds bad,
Limited
but-
options, you're right.
Mhm.
And now the options are plentiful. Even if I think about television programming, I don't remember when I was growing up, there was a football game on, multiple football games on television on Sundays or.
Maybe one.
Maybe one.
I don't know.
Black
I
and
mean,
white.
Channels, that's all they do.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
There are the NBA has a channel, golf has a channel, tennis
Right.
has a channel, football has a channel, and then there's all the other stuff.
And then
Yeah.
computers came.
And computers
Yeah.
came along, you can stream
And
movies
wow.
and, go to the movies or stream the movies or, there's all kinds of entertainment in your own home besides all the other stuff, so.
This is the same issue that has affected other clubs and
I was
organizations.
thinking
yeah.
the same
The
thing,
Moose,
Dan.
the
All you have
Elks,
to do
Yeah.
is look at.
The country club.
All social organizations.
yes, face the exact same problem.
Right.
Even service organizations,
Right.
in
Right,
Frankfurt are.
Rotary, Kiwanis.
I was in Tri-Kappa,
Yeah.
I was went from the active to the associate. The active chapter just folded, well, we had no way that we were gonna bring any more people in, and finally they said, well, so now the associate chapter is folded, and, at one time, they served a real role, but, we're down to organizations, the Lions maybe has less than 10 people, active members, I don't know how many.
Well, and
really-
it's not only, it's even in the entertainment. I mean, the high school football games, when you would go, the stadium would be packed and the theater would be packed for big
That's
broadcast,
true.
you know,
For the plays and-
the Red Barn was filled to capacity, so it's all these things are
It is.
just
Competing for time.
competing for time, and
Uh-huh.
people are going, I'm done. I,
And then we
Which-
get into a vicious cycle where
yeah,
the structure is not in place and the enthusiasm is not there. So then, given the choice, right, between sitting in on countless and zillions of hours of meetings and watching football, right, or going to a Little League game, I mean, the choice is pretty obvious. I'm going to choose to spend time with my family or to watch this thing that I enjoy, right? If it's not particularly pertinent or interesting or if it doesn't fill your cup in some way, right?
but that's where it goes back to our mission statement.
Right.
Do we, as Christians, believe it's important for people to know God and experience God's love? If we really believe that that's important, then how do we share that? How do we get people to see that this is more important than watching football? You know,
Right.
how do we? And we've talked about, that witnessing and telling our story, and I don't know. I don't have an answer.
I know.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
We're trying to navigate through that right now as we prepare for Advent with our theme of It's a Wonderful Life. It is a free event to the community. We had a discussion about the buttons of the last scene in It's a Wonderful Life. So this book would say, well, don't put anything on those buttons. Like, don't put St. Matthew United Methodist Church on those buttons. Just have everyone come in, enjoy the movie. They will see your enthusiasm and feel it. But still, there's a tug there. Well, shouldn't we I mean, I felt it in our last meeting. Should we really have the name of the church on the buttons?
Mhm.
Have
I
we
thought about
considered-
it all day,
Yeah.
like after we left.
Yeah.
It's like, just take this gift. You know it's from us. You were here with us. This is our gift to you. Now just take the button. I mean, you know it's from our church. I don't know, you know?
Well, and again, we, tying that, how do we use that opportunity? Okay, you're gonna come watch the movie, but how do we use that opportunity to tie that to our faith journey?
Yes.
And that we want you to have a wonderful life, and one of the ways your life can be enriched is by having a relationship with Jesus Christ. How do we say that?
I know, yeah.
Right.
Because that's really what we want them to hear when they come to the movie, is we want you to have a wonderful life.
Yes.
And here's how
We
you
need a
can,
skit
you can
says
make that happen.
Before we watch the movie.
well, we're going to have our wonderful writer, see if she could write something. But that's the kind of struggle that I think this program is helping us at least think through those
through.
pieces. Because before we just say, okay, let's invite people to the movie. Okay, we invited them to the movie. We had 50 people here. Wasn't that fun?
Right. Well, this is a
Right.
great segue
Yes.
to this question.
Okay.
How are events, activities, and ministries evaluated for their effectiveness? How would you define effective? Right? And I think this goes hand in hand with the SMART goal discussion is how, at the end of the day, let's say we hold an event or we, whatever our goal is to make, our mission to make disciples, at what point do we say, well, that was effective, right? By what metric are we measuring this
Yeah.
effectiveness? And
Yeah.
what metric, I guess, has the church used? And I feel like we don't have to rehash this. We've already talked about it. It's been the traditional side of things. We've just always done it. We haven't necessarily looked at the effectiveness of X, Y, or Z activity.
Yeah.
But this is the question that we can talk about here before we switch gears into the movie or the video. How would you define effectiveness or success? Right? Like, at what point is an event successful, or a ministry, or whatever the church is putting on? Success,
So
effective.
if we use your mom's example, we use
Right.
that one as an example.
Yeah.
So that the group, as they're planning, their goal is to have X number of people that would be at this event. And if you do the things that they've talked about in here, we would have some sort of registration of some sort where you capture those people's contact information, and then, in the past, people would say, wasn't that a great success? Look at all the people that we had, and everybody had a good time. And then they left, and that would be the end of it, And, so you need to have that follow-up where somebody calls and says, oh, I saw you at the movie, I'm so glad that you came, I hope you'll come back to St. Matthew. In relation to your question, I don't know anything about what your discussion was, but I would say if you've got the picture that symbolizes that movie, and you get those people to wear that, and somebody says, that's really cool, and then they would say, oh, I went to the movie at St. Matthew.
Which is what you were
I
saying.
don't-
Which is what I did say
Right.
eventually.
I don't think
yes.
you need to have the name on there, because
Mhm.
if you put the name on there, we didn't produce that movie.
No.
We just showed it.
Yeah.
And we did, we're endorsing it
Mhm.
and the theme of the movie, but,
Mhm.
and it looks like advertisement.
Yes.
That's what it looks like. It looks
Yes.
like cheap advertisement to me.
Mhm.
I think it's much better to give them that. It's a gift. Here's a gift to you
It's a gift.
as a remembrance
Yes.
of the themes of this
token.
movie.
Yes, and hopefully it becomes a conversation piece.
That's right.
Yes.
If they will continue to wear it,
Mhm.
and then other people, and then, if you had come and I was assigned to call you, hey, Abby, I know that you were at the movie, I hope you really enjoyed it, I really liked it, it's always good for me to see it and refresh my, I hope to see you at church on Sunday. You know, I'll be wearing my button. I hope you do too. Or, you know, something, and, you know,
Yeah.
and a reinforcement, and I get there early and I stand there at the door and wait for you.
Right,
Right.
right.
I mean, and the goal would be that I would recognize you, not like poor Mary Jo talking about the guy that she keeps stalking.
She keeps forgetting.
I can't remember his name, she keeps stalking the guy,
We don't know his name.
I don't know
Yeah.
if she's ever found out what his name is. And the poor man's trying to stop coming because he thinks she's stalking him.
Meanwhile,
I mean, because that does happen, you know, it's like, oh dear, you know, I mean, no matter where I sit in the church, there she is. You know?
Yes.
So, you know, I think though, you know,
Yeah.
it should be somebody, and maybe your hospitality group, you know, when somebody comes in, if we don't know those people that are here, be sure that you make an association, take a mental picture. You know, I mean, I obviously can't pull out your camera and take a picture of them, but try to make a mental note so that when we, the next day, or even after that event, you know, we sit down and let's start dividing them up now.
Well-
Oh, I remember that. You remember that guy? He had kind of reddish hair and he had the glasses on and everything. He had the white shirt. What was his name? And I can't remember his name, but you remember it's Randy. And I'll say, okay, I'll take Randy, you know.
And I think this goes with, sorry.
No.
Okay,
No.
this goes with something we brought up 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was 4. This idea
all blended together.
of follow-through,
Yeah.
right? We need a follow-through, an action plan for following up,
Yeah.
whether that's with people relationally, or if at this event, at the end, we say, we hope you consider joining us this Sunday for service, or whatever the next event is, right? Hopefully, between now and then, we'll have an idea of what the next big St. Matthew event is, to get people in a
The live
bridge
nativity.
event.
Yeah, the live nativity.
And-
Live nativity.
Yeah, if I had Alvia's name and she didn't show up and I'm standing at the door waiting and she doesn't show up, and I think that actually they say you're supposed to send them a note or something first before you make a direct call, but, you know, whatever, however you chose to handle it. But if we got to the point, if this happened prior to the live nativity, you know, a day or two before that, I might give you a call and say, you know, hey, Albia, I know that I remember you from It's a Wonderful Life, and I just wanted to let you know we're having a live nativity. It's just drive-through. You can put all the people in the car you want, and you know, and invite them to come back.
Right.
You might not ever be able to track whether they did. Now that one, you wouldn't be able to track the success, except you'd know the numbers, right?
Yeah, yeah. And here again, all these things take people
Mm-hmm.
to implement them.
Yeah.
And that's where we tend to go. We hit a roadblock. I think there are people out there that are waiting to say,
yes.
to hear, I have this task that needs to be done. This is what you need to do. This is how much time it will take. Can you help us with this? And people will say yes to that. And I think that's where we need to start with people.
Reframing that.
Yeah.
And being honest
Discussion.
about it. Don't
Yeah.
tell them it's gonna take a couple of hours, and then
If-
they find out 10 hours later, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I've been to 5 meetings and it's still going on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That
you
it's
need to stick to whatever it is you say.
be, make.
But if I understood this right, in this particular case, if I had chosen Alvia out of the crowd, I picked her, that might be my only commitment for the year. I mean, maybe even longer. I'm going to try and mentor Alvia and meet her where she is.
Right.
You know,
And if,
it's,
yeah.
we had.
And if
when
we had-
bad snowfall, Alvia, I noticed that you might not, maybe you don't feel like shoveling. Do you need any help? Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do to help you?
And if we had 5 people doing that for 5 people,
Mhm.
it would start making a difference.
Yeah.
I think it would.
The
Because
questions
those
committee.
kinds of things,
What can we do? What can,
Yeah.
what do you need? How can I help, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's
a
right. 'cause
Questions
that's-
committee.
How can I help you?
I think something that has been pretty effective are these prayer cards,
Uh-huh.
contact.
Yeah, I've
And
gotten
the only
good
one I
response.
did was Connie Rohrbaugh, and I've known Connie for years, and I talked to her a couple of days ago, and we had a great conversation, and I don't know who thought of this and how it got started, but I hope we keep it going.
Mhm.
And I think this is an example of what we need to do more of.
Yeah,
So,
Well, and
Yeah.
that's care within our own congregation.
yeah.
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 Well, good for you. I sent cards to my people and I didn't get any feedback from anybody.
I have sent cards, and some I haven't heard from, but some have. One person stopped me in the store and said, "Oh, I got your card. Thank you so much. It was so nice."
That's nice.
You know, so I've gotten a couple.
I had a college girl. It was right before she was going to college. So I had that one, and the other one was a man, and I thought, oh, he might be uncomfortable. I just called him, or his wife might not be real, but I sent a card. So,
All right. Good discussion. Heard a lot of good things. This was a while ago, but this is something that I liked, was this obligation versus inspiration. I think that should be something we consider as we go about our business. Let's watch this video. It relates to...
Before you do that,
Oh, yeah.
I just have to ask, since I missed the first part of this, to me, this was the most uplifting chapter that we've studied so far. I read that one and I thought, okay, I think we could do this. The others seemed so overwhelming. I mean, there was so much in those others that I thought, oh my gosh, did you feel that way? I mean, you didn't feel that way. Nobody else did.
Sorry, I didn't get fired.
I felt better about this one. The others just seemed, overwhelming.
Well, maybe this is exactly the role for strategic ministry planning that you'd be right for.
Yeah.
Have that fire.
There you go.
We have a strategic planning chair.
Yes, we do.
I don't think so.
And that's how it happens.
That's right. And then-
That's why people don't say anything.
You're exactly right. And then they twist your arm.
No, I'm just saying, if you have the passion, if you have the skill set, use
That's
it.
right.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Jack Harden. Today you're going to expand your vision and horizon as we consider new ways to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, which is the mission of our church and the mission of your church as well. I want to focus on the adaptive shift that needs to take place to being a preference-driven congregation to a strategic-driven congregation. That is, too often in our churches, we make decisions based on what the majority of our members prefer. However, that may not be the best way to do ministry in the church today. What if we switch that focus from what we prefer to the preference, the aspiration, the desires of the people we're trying to reach with the gospel of Jesus Christ? That's a difficult shift to make for any congregation. There is one congregation I know that before they make any decision, they remind themselves of this statement: it's not about us. What would happen if your congregation took that perspective as a way to think about strategic ministry, reaching out in the name of Jesus Christ to the people you're trying to reach? We won't forget to do ministry with our own people, but the people we're trying to reach become the primary beneficiaries. So this is a major shift you're going to be discussing. Our presenter today is Reverend Kurt Freeman, who is the lead pastor at Christ United Methodist Church in Lafayette.
Oh, Christ,
When
I
this
had the
was
wrong
filmed,
church.
Kurt was the lead pastor at Wabash First Church. Blessings to you as you dig into this important topic, this adaptive shift, as you become a strategic driven congregation.
I'm Reverend Kurt Freeman. I'm from First United Methodist Church, where I'm in Wabash, where I'm the senior pastor. Wabash is implementing their missional action plans for the ADAPT process. I want to talk to you about how we shifted from being a preference-driven congregation to having a strategic plan for implementing our mission of making new disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So when I first arrived at Wabash First, there really wasn't a plan. They've gone through a lot of stuff, and so we worked on what it would mean to be in mission. And one of the first questions I asked them was, what does it mean to be in church? What does it take? What does church look like? And in the midst of all the questions, I had one person said, one thing necessary for a church was that we had robes on the pastor. That sort of took me by surprise, because I've been in churches where there weren't any robes in the building, let alone on the pastors or anybody else. And so as I listened, I realized this church was really focused on their preference. And so we began working and praying and seeing, where are the people in our community who aren't in our church? We started praying for our neighborhoods. I was in a confirmation class I was leading that my daughter happened to be in. And I talked about what does it mean to be in ministry to our neighborhood. Because I believe that the church is the only human institution that exists for the sake of its non-members. And so I took them outside into our parking lot, and I pointed at the burnt out hole of a house right on our property, and I said, that was a meth fire, because the people were cooking meth in that. And then I pointed across the street and down a couple houses at this big white house, and I said, that's a meth house. And then we looked at another house, and just there in our parking lot, I could see 6 drug houses where the police were called to regularly. And I said, what would it mean to be in ministry with this community? One of the kids said, we call the police and we go inside, please. I said, no, that's not what it means to be in ministry with this community. And it started with praying. And this church started walking in their neighborhood and praying for the people who had no hope and went to the drug house because it's easier to medicate our pain than to deal with it. And they started praying for the rest of their neighbors, and they began to see all the people. And that's where Wabash stopped focusing on being preference-driven and started having a strategic plan to reach their neighborhood. Because they realized that the church members, up until then, had been the main beneficiaries of their ministry, but God had called them to be a church for Wabash, and they defined the 4-block radius around their church as their mission field. That's where we're going to be at work. That's where we're going to have boots on the ground. And they looked and they said, you know what, we also want to focus on our schools, because that's our mission field. Children need to know that God loves them. And as we started to develop a plan, my associate pastor and I, we've been praying for the people going to those drug houses. We've been praying for the people who were dealing. We started praying for all of our community. And my associate, he has a special heart for addicts, because his son is a recovering addict. And we were praying about how can we reach this community of people who just need to know God loves them. How could that be part of our strategic plan? We ended up starting a Brianna's Hope Chapter. We love people. We feed people. We invite people to a better life outside of stations. And then my children's ministry director said, you know what, there's all these kids in this neighborhood who they don't always have enough to eat, and their parents aren't always helping them. And we began praying about how can we reach them? How can we love them? How can we meet them where they're at? Instead of just doing for our own kids and raising our own kids up as disciples, what if we saw all of these kids as our kids? So we started a child-led worship service where we love kids and we feed kids and we invite kids to a better life, and we let them lead each other in prayer. And one kid comes who doesn't go to church anywhere. And he asks every week, can I read the scripture? Can I lead in prayer? And this church decided to start focusing outside of themselves. And we have a group of people who meet regularly to pray for our community, and we walk through the neighborhoods and we pray. We walk around and we see the people. For Wabash First, They didn't have a plan. Their plan was to survive. And surviving is a difficult thing sometimes, especially when you've been through hard things. But God has called us to be a people on mission. That can include rovers, but it doesn't have to. Our strategic ministry plan includes having a traditional service where we meet people where they are, we love people where they are. But it also includes going out and hanging out with addicts, loving them, feeding them, fighting them. In the midst of this, we've recognized William Bridges' 4 Ps, that you have to have a purpose, and our purpose is the mission that's given to us by the United Methodist Church. We tweaked it just a little. We say we exist to make new disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And right now, our map that we're working on as we're recording this is our vision. We're going to form a picture of what it means to fulfill that for Wabash for the next 3 to 5 years. But I guarantee it'll have something to do with loving people, feeding people, and inviting them to a better life, whether they're addicts or kids on the street. And everybody we know has a part. And we're working out what that means. But so far what it's meant is people are going around praying. People are feeding kids. People are bringing in meals. People are praying. People are supporting. Sometimes people come in and speak, teach. We're developing that plan. This is an ongoing part, but we're being strategic, and it's taking us time. I'd rather go slow and steady to finish the race and to win this community for Jesus Christ. So moving from preference to strategic plan is where you need to work, because God has a plan for you to fulfill in your neighborhood. And if we just focus on what we've always done and what we like and what we're comfortable with, we're never going to reach those who need it most. So my prayer for you is that as you go through this, it's going to be a hard road, and it's going to take work, and it's going to take time. But my prayer for you is that you will shift from being a preference-driven congregation to one with a strategic plan to make new disciples of Jesus Christ in your world and to transform your world like we're transforming Wabash.
It's interesting, he said 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
You know, and they're already in this process, I mean, they're already
Yeah.
further along. And then he said, that one part, you know, it'll, over the next
It'd be
3 to
interesting, because he's not there anymore.
Yeah. over the
He's
next
not
3
at
to 5
Wabash anymore,
Yeah,
so.
over the next 3 to 5 years.
Where is
Yeah.
he? Do we know?
He's in Lafayette. He said, I thought it was Lafayette Grace, but I think he said
Christ.
Christ.
This is the guy you're talking
Christ.
about.
Yeah,
man.
Christ, yeah. I liked his comment that the church is the only institution that exists for non-members.
Right.
True.
I-
Like that
Yeah.
stood out too.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a perspective shift that
yeah,
every Christian could use
Yeah.
at some point or another,
Yeah.
right?
yeah. It's not about me. It's, yeah, not about us.
Not about us.
And that the people we are trying to reach are the primary beneficiaries of should be the primary beneficiaries of all our work.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things over these videos and in the book that I've noticed are as things that I feel like churches do that we don't. I hear prayer walks all the time. When was the last time St. Matthew hosted a prayer walk for the community, for our neighbors, right? We
Yeah.
have this apartment complex right next to us that
It was when Gene Brindle was here, and there were 5 of us that went.
okay. Maybe talking about the demographics and talking
Yeah.
about kind of preference, right?
Well,
maybe
and
we didn't.
And again, it was not well planned.
Okay.
It was not well planned.
All
It
right.
was not. Yeah.
Was it
So-
It wasn't a good experience for me.
Right.
So
Because it was not well planned?
yes, and yeah,
Were you not well prepared, you think, or,
we weren't prepared at all.
okay. See, and then.
And those of us that gathered, it was like, okay, go do it. And we wandered out, and 2 went this way, and I teamed up with somebody and we tried to follow, thought we were gonna go together, but they took off and the other people, it was just
Yeah, no strategy at all.
no strategy
No
at all.
strategic planning.
It was, here's this piece of paper, read this and go do it.
Right.
What do you think was the experience of the people that you met?
We didn't meet anybody. We just went and prayed over
Houses.
Turtle Creek and McDonald's and
Oh,
It was literally a prayer walk, not prayer walk and talk.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know my son's church has done more of the prayer walk where you, and they can be done in different ways of we're creating this boundary, kind of what he talked about, there's 4-block radius
yeah.
and we're praying for the people in this and, so there's different, and I think another group went uptown when they were having the meetings up at the coffee
At the
shop.
coffee shop.
I think that was one of the things that they did was downtown and went and prayed
Yeah.
over the police station and the courthouse and so there's different ways to do prayer
Yeah.
walks, but
I don't know,
it's
I
not something we have done much.
I feel like that neighborhood aspect is
Yeah.
what I really like hearing about
Yeah.
is, who is our mission target? The people we have people in the community.
Yeah.
Clearly, Meth House exploded over here. This is a drug house. We have drug houses
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah.
Right, these are the
It's a
people.
safe place for their kids to be attending church.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And here, we have Turtle Creek, we have Friendship Village, we have Wilshire Court,
In
we
Clinton
have-
Estates.
Clinton Estates, this neighborhood here, which has changed, so we have a neighborhood. that
Yeah.
We could,
We have a neighborhood, and I keep thinking we should do more partnership with programming with the Y, because we have certain things that we could offer that the Y can't, and they have things that they can offer programming-wise, physical activity, all that kind of stuff that we don't have.
Strategic
They have a
planning
bus.
chairman. Right there. Every time she opens her mouth,
It's-
it's just these great ideas coming out.
Stop
We've
it.
checked 2 boxes.
Yeah.
Third time's a
Stop it.
charm.
Stop it. I'm not
I
saying
move we
another
close
word.
nominations.
I'm not saying another word.
And I can see the train coming down the track.
That's a good idea. No, it's,
Well, but
and
that is.
And-
in
and
our
we have
mission
done
field.
some
It
of
is in our
those.
mission field. And
Yeah,
the high
yeah.
school, no, I mean, because I have given thought to this, and they're not, we have an area in our fellowship hall where you could set up tables and study areas where we could shuttle kids back and forth to the Y that have to go there for daycare, or not, after-school care.
yeah,
But they could be, if we had tutors or something that were here where we could shuttle kids back and forth, you need help with this, and, it might only be once a week that Jimmy needs help with his math. The other nights, he's already got it all, but if he needs, but the high school, of course, there's the high school. The high school is would be in our mission field, or in our neighborhood.
geographic neighborhood.
Yeah.
You'd have to stretch to get to the middle school, and if you do that, then you're, and of course, if you were talking about various churches, the Nazarene Church would probably be the better one for that, but, and they're talking about, building a technical facility?
Yeah, at Marsh.
Yeah, Marsh.
At Marsh.
Mhm.
Might be in our mission field. if we
Well,
didn't-
and we now have a beautiful kitchen that we could do wonderful things with, and, and we do Brianna's Hope, but, and I keep thinking about having cooking classes or, doing, because so many people, they get stuff from Food Finders or the Salvation Army, they get a bag of stuff and I've served with the Food Finders and sometimes I look like, what would I do with this?
Yeah.
How would I use this?
How would I make a meal?
How would I make a meal out of this? And And again, because we have a nice kitchen here that we could do classes in there, we could do.
You could, or have you ever gone to any of those classes at the library when the home ec club puts that on?
Hmm.
It's pretty cool because they have a workstation here, and then there's
Yeah.
a mirror
Mirror.
that's mirrored. And so
Yeah, my
the person
grandkids have done that.
Talk to you about all the things, and you're looking in the mirror, and you can see exactly what she is doing. And
Mary Jo and I actually went to a cooking class that Food Finders puts on over in
oh,
Lafayette.
do they? Okay.
And it was really interesting. And they, if they attend the cooking class, then they get a voucher to get something extra at the food bank.
Ah,
But then the cooking class is based on what's available at the food bank, which I thought was interesting.
huh. That is interesting.
But what
But
you
it
were
would
saying
be-
about
It would be
the,
a great follow-up,
Yeah.
though, to, you know,
and
if you knew ahead what they were gonna get, and you could have the
Yeah.
class first and say, in your box, or is that
Yeah.
how they come in your box, you're going to get this and this and this, and here are some suggestions as to how you can prepare that food.
well, and again, it doesn't even necessarily need to be for people that are picking up food from the food pantry.
Oh.
We did freezer meals and, just young families of helping them see how can I put together a quick meal? How can I plan, I don't have time to cook. How can I plan my week so meals are easier to put together? And, so it doesn't even need to be for poverty.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's
Just-
well, Rachel Ray made a whole,
Yeah.
a successful career showing you how you can make a meal in 30 minutes,
Yeah, yeah.
From start to finish. She started with nothing and ended up with a meal,
Yeah. I was going to say, on your tutor program, that's one of the things, to me, would fit in well with our congregation, because we are an educated congregation, and I think there's a lot of people in our congregation that would have that gift to do that.
Absolutely. All right. We're nearing the end of our time. Well, we have about 9 minutes left. What is the key insight for our church in its current context? Out of this discussion, out of everything we've talked about today, what's the key insight that would be beneficial to transfer to the whole church?
We're here to serve our non-members.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole preference to change. I thought his discussion about gotta wear the robes and that kind of thing was kind of interesting, that was what was important to that particular person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's probably coming from the context. You expect to see a pastor in a
Right.
robe on Sunday morning.
Yeah. But how does that help us make disciples?
It doesn't.
Right.
Exactly.
It doesn't,
Right.
but
If there's
But
expectations.
But you know-
people that if
at
they
least
didn't
you
wear
know who the
collar,
pastor is when you
Yeah.
come in on Sunday morning.
Yeah. But Michael did ask that question. He said, what should I wear? And I said, well, it shouldn't matter. He said, I know, but I don't want people to quit listening before I even start because of how I'm dressed. It's like,
It's a very good
it's
insight.
It's sad
Yes.
that we go there. I said, well, don't wear holy jeans,
Right.
but,
Well, they
you
say
know.
people make, they make like 11 decisions about you
Yeah.
in the first 10 seconds that they meet you. I
Yeah.
mean, and in about that amount of time, they have decided whether they like you or don't. I mean, that's a terrible thing, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's what the research shows.
yeah.
I think our church service is more traditional, even though we've tried to combine things.
Mm.
I
We're
think,
holding on to that.
I think
Yeah,
he
we're
should
very-
show up as a pastor.
Well, he doesn't have a robe or a collar because he's not that kind of a pastor.
Well, then,
So,
so that was not really the question then. Was he just asking, do I wear a tie?
I think so.
Okay.
Do I come in a suit and tie? Do I come in, you know.
I say suit and tie. I
Think so?
really do. The last time.
Cover up his tattoos.
No, I'm saying that because.
Michael, our son.
Oh, okay.
Our church, even with the combined service, that service to me is very traditional.
Yeah.
We're not singing a lot of praise songs, you know. We don't
But do
have a
even our
band up
people
there.
come in suit and ties?
Demographic
No,
of
the,
who
la-
attends.
the last time many of the people who are still alive saw your son, he may have been in the youth group.
He was in the.
He's a totally different person now. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking.
If you would like to branch out, maybe before the next meeting, there is a Christian rapper that I like. His name is Lecrae, and he has an album titled Church Clothes Volume 2. There are two of them. But that was the first album I heard of his. I haven't really listened to anything else other than that album because I heard it in high school and I had the CD. I borrowed the CD from a friend. It's very good, and he talks about that in some of his songs. Is like, what is the image of Christianity, and why does it matter what we wear, right? And he goes on to he talks about that in his lyrics, but yeah, he has Church Clothes Volume 1, which I haven't heard, but Church Clothes Volume 2, which I have heard is the superior album between the two. Talks about this idea of, well, what do I wear, right?
So how
and
what's his name?
Lecrae, Lecrae. So if we're wanting to expand our horizons,
Yeah.
listen to some Christian rap. Got to listen to Lecrae. He's really good. I had forgotten about him and just listened to that album probably 2 or 3 months ago, driving to and from work, because I was like, yeah. Well, not 2 or 3 months ago. That would have been the beginning of summer. Maybe it was the beginning of summer. I don't remember when I listened to him, but it was recently.
Rap does not compute in my strategic planning mind.
Right. Yeah. Well.
Does
Well.
not
I think
compute.
it's late, and
It just
my
turns me off the right.
right. Yes. Well, it is very strategic, very lyrical. You put the
See?
words and.
He made a judgment call in the first 10 seconds.
Right.
As soon as he heard the word rap, he had made a judgment call.
Absolutely, I've never
Right.
heard rap music that I like.
That-
Right.
Or that you understood, did not compute.
Right. That's true.
It's fair.
Okay, I say at least a tie.
All right, I'll let him know.
Button-up shirt and a tie.
When Michael speaks at
An
City
ascot.
Yeah.
long sleeve shirt and a tie.
Yes,
Yep,
a
All
tie,
right.
definitely a tie.
I will let him know.
right, we don't need to see any tattoos.
Why not?
You know, that is such a generational thing, though.
I suppose
I
it
look
is.
at all those
Oh, it is.
Olympians, my
Mhm.
goodness, they had tattoos
Yep.
every place, and the women, there are women that have tattoos, there are women tennis players that are out there now.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a whole
I know.
sleeve,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm like, that would hurt and cost a lot of money. You know, see, there's a practical side of us, you know, it's like, why would you wanna do that, and you get older.
Well, I
it's
guess
like-
it comes down to, does he want to make a visual impression or a verbal impression to his message? You know, what?
Well, that's what he
is
said.
his message? And if it's a verbal message and he wants us to see his Jesus tattoo, then, you know, you can come in a, a tank top.
Yeah.
Well, his tattoos are faith-based, but they require an explanation to understand them, so.
Well, that's cool. All right. Any last comments for the good of, we are here to serve our non-members is the key insight that I think we need to share with the rest of the congregation. Is there any other key insight before we close out?
Other than Janelle's gonna be our strategic plan.
That I want, oh, no,
Da-da-da-da-da.
no,
And I was thinking when you were saying the Y had some things that we don't have and we have some things, the Y has a bus. The Y has the YMCA
Yes, they
buses.
sure
so
They have more than one, don't they?
more
They
than I
have
think
two.
two,
They
if
have
I'm
two.
not mistaken. So just throwing that out there. We know we can't get a church bus.
Yeah, Emily Norris contacted us back in March to use the the backyard there for youth soccer. So I went and talked to her and, just kind of got up to date on, post-COVID, what they were doing. And so trustees agreed that yes, they could use the lawn. And then I said, hopefully you'll be receptive that if some of our youth want to come over, for some activity that, the Y will be open to hosting it. She said, absolutely. So, we haven't gone back and asked for anything, but they're
I
open
think that
to
there's
it.
a. there
Well,
should be a
we've
good
done things
reciprocal-
before. I mean, we've
Yeah.
had swim parties over there and the
A
Clinton County Youth Group
reciprocal
meets
thing.
there and so.
You know, and I
yeah,
mean,
there's-
at some point, maybe Brianna's hope, maybe they would wanna do basketball or an open gym or something like that, and,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
just, I don't know.
I think we, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You
Yeah.
finished?
No, I'm done.
Are you sure?
I wasn't gonna say anything a long time ago, I forgot. She sucked me in.
I'm drawn to, if there is no fire, how can we ignite the fire? How can we do that?
I think we have a little smoldering going on. I think we have some people and some, that are passionate about things, and we need to figure out ways to bring those people in. Don't you think? Bring people in who have that shared passion about whatever that is. I mean, you can't spread yourself, what do they say? An inch deep and a mile long? Yeah. But
All right. Thank you for this session.
Don't forget to sign.
Oh, yeah, the attendance
oh,
sheet.
just sign my name. I don't know why we pass this around.
Oh, and Janelle, we are going to meet, instead of on September 9th, we're going to meet on September 7th, the Tuesday of that week.
Okay, I can't be here. That solves my other problem, which I was gonna ask you about.
And we're gonna do the session on Sunday morning on the 5th. So,
Okay.
or the video will be
I'm
available.
gonna be in New York.
Oh.
And I'd come home in the evening on the 7th. And I was like not sure about coming here. I mean, I thought, well, I could sit back over there and wear a mask and maybe it'd be okay, but I knew Mary Jo would probably freak out and probably some others too. I mean, you all have, little kids and all that, so.
Yeah.
I'm planning on staying healthy, but,
Yeah.
so I don't have to worry about it. I won't be able to be here either
Okay.
day.
Okay.
The 5th, I'll be
Or
on
the
the
7th.
5th and the 7th,
Well,
so, okay.
hopefully the video will be online and you can
I'm
catch
not
up.
figuring out how to access them.
I think now that we found your niche in strategic planning,
Stop.
you probably don't even need to attend any of the other sessions.
Stop.
There are
There's
no
only
actions to take as a group at this time. However, take some time to focus on what God may be calling you to develop or to do in your personal life. Our homework is to read chapter 10 for the next session. Would anybody like to volunteer to be the devotion and prayer leader? Devotion or prayer leader, they're not the same role.
I haven't done devotions yet. I'll go do devotions.
Okay, thank you.
You won't be here.
I won't be here, I got off that one.
I could, is it just doing the opening prayer?
Opening, closing prayers.
I can do that.
All right, thank you.
Where is Mary Jo? Is she sick? Is she okay? Or do we know?
We don't know. I ran into her on Tuesday and she had a bad cold. She said she was,
And Mary
had been
Jan-
tested negative on COVID, but she was hacking around pretty
She
good,
didn't
so.
sound good 2 weeks ago, she had her mask on, and-
Yeah.
And she
She's
was
been wearing a
coughing.
mask for a while.
but she was coughing, really, it
Oh.
didn't sound
Yeah,
good.
so.
Oh, so she did go get it.
Okay.
Yeah, she did get a COVID test and it was negative, but
And
Okay.
where's Sherry? Sherry's not, Sherry?
I,
Well, you saw her.
yeah, she was here unloading stuff for Mountain Mission, and I didn't say anything to her because she was busy.
Okay. And Wendy? Our group is dwindling down.
I know, and I'm not sure, I know,
Okay.
I don't know.
Close
Well,
us out
at
in
least as
prayer.
far as we know, everybody's healthy then.
As far as we know.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dear God, thank you for this time together to listen and share and just try to sort things out. Dear God, we need a fire. Just help us figure out how to ignite that fire. Because we do love you, and we want other people to love you too. Just be with us this week as we interact with other people, and just help us find ways to show your love. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Alrighty.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I hope tomorrow goes
Well, we're making up tests
better for
tomorrow,
you.
so it'll be less talking just because of that.
You had a bad day today?
I had a mixed bag day.
Okay.
I had a single class that was rambunctious. So, but we have to work through some